Incredible moment, CEO's unexpected kindness transforms struggling mother's life at his party. Sarah stood in front of the mirror, her reflection a mix of resolve and anxiety. She had put on the only dress she owned that was suitable for the gala, an old black number she had forgotten about until she rifled through her closet earlier that day. It felt wrong somehow, the fabric a reminder of her unpaid bills and relentless cycle of working double shifts just to keep food on the table for her 2 kids. Yet, the invitation, with its elegant calligraphy, made the prospect of a better life shimmer tantalizingly close. Could this be the spark that ignited change? Or would she crumble in this world of wealth, where every corner felt out of reach? As she approached the doors of the venue, a wave of warmth spilled out into the Chicago night, mingling with laughter and clinking glasses. She hesitated, anxiety tightening her throat. The space was rich with decor, luxurious yet distant, much like the dreams she had reluctantly set aside. She could feel the eyes of the affluent darting her way, scrutinizing her every move. What business did she have here? David, the charismatic CEO, soon caught her eye, effortlessly navigating through the crowd. To him, she might just be another nameless outsider, but as their paths converged, she felt an undeniable connection. His presence radiated confidence, and in that moment, she couldn't help but lean into her dreams. "I want to start a non-profit," she said, her voice barely steady. "To help families like mine." Caught in the gravity of their conversation, Sarah shared her vision and her fears in hesitant whispers. And yet, as they spoke, a flicker of something larger ignited within her. Yet, the moment quickly darkened with doubt when whispers of disbelief circulated around her. Who was she to think she could change anything? The notion gnawed at her, uncertainty clawing through her heart. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each meeting with David provided a glimmer of hope, his mentorship illuminated pathways she hadn't dared to consider. But as soon as her name began to echo in conversations about change, the shadows of her past loomed larger. Friends and family cheered her ambitions, yet whispers of "who does she think she is?" taunted her, leaving bruises on her spirit. The dilemma seethed: could she truly be worthy of this new life? Then came the offer, a prestigious position promising everything she had ever dreamed of, financial stability that could lift the burdens from her shoulders. But the very thought felt like shackles, chaining her to the system she yearned to disrupt. At a gathering where David fervently championed her cause, an unexpected slam of negativity struck like a chilling wind. Accusations of her past resurfaced, cutting into her newly minted identity. Anguish enveloped her, and she wished for the ground to swallow her whole. As David defended her, his voice cutting through the confusion, every eye turned to her. The intensity warranted a choice: embrace the job that could change everything or fight for the vision burning deep within her. Sarah's mind raced, confusion and longing intertwined. The stakes couldn't be higher. In this moment, on the precipice of destiny, the tension thickened. What would she choose? Would she define her life on her own terms or become another statistic of unfulfilled dreams? The air around her felt charged, electric with the weight of impending decisions. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the uncertainty swirling in her mind. The room closed in, demanding clarity when her thoughts felt like a chaotic storm. What would it mean to accept the offer? No more worrying about groceries or lights being turned off. A sense of safety that seemed like a distant land was now within reach. But at what cost? Her aspirations fluttered like caged birds, desperate for freedom, yet the very structure she sought to escape now stretched its arms wide, inviting her in. David's gaze pinned her, full of encouragement yet laced with concern. She felt his belief in her hang in the balance between their unspoken bond and the snide voices echoing in her ear. Were those voices mere reflections of her self-doubt, or were they rooted in reality? The familiar tightness of her throat returned, a harsh reminder of her struggles. "Sarah?" David's voice broke through her reverie, gentle but insistent. "You don't have to decide right now, but I want you to understand that your story matters. You can be a force for good, not just in your life, but in many others' lives too." His words ignited a flicker of resolve, but it was still fragile, clashing against the fears she had carried for too long. As she stepped away from the chaos, seeking a moment of solitude amongst the extravagant decor, she confronted herself in a reflection of gold hues and deep shadows. A life of stability mirrored against a life of purpose hung before her, and she was caught in the crossfire between aspiration and practicality. Could her desire to uplift others truly outshine her need for security? In that moment, the haunting question echoed in her mind: did pursuing her dream mean abandoning her children to a life of struggle? Or could she prove that one did not have to sacrifice the other? Each question jostled for attention, competing for resolution. Drawing a shaky breath, Sarah took a deeper look at her limitations, realizing that every worry was a possibility, one that ignited ideas about how to chart her own path forward. She remembered her own upbringing, times when kindness, albeit scarce, left an imprint on her spirit. That truth could fuel her nonprofit. She could entwine her past with her future, crafting a legacy that could transform not only her life but the lives of many. But, as clarity danced just out of reach, a familiar voice slithered back into her head. The problem wouldn't just be believing in herself, it would be overcoming the skepticism others had of her. The thought forced her to question whether she had the courage to face those confrontations head-on. Drawing on the last reserves of strength inside her, she resolved to face them not with silence, but with conviction. If David and her circle believed in her, maybe that was a sign to build her own belief system. Sarah felt her resolve crystallizing as she rejoined David. He was talking with a small group, but the moment he turned, the warmth in his smile fortified her spirit. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about creating something impactful. In that instant, she made a decision to combine ambition with her intention for true change. Yet underneath the burgeoning optimism lay an unsettling tension. She could feel the impending confrontation hovering closer. The choice to step forward was now electrified with the stakes of her past and the weight of her ambition. As Sarah readied to voice her vision again, knowing she would undoubtedly face dissent, the gnawing question loomed: how to silence the detractors. Next was a decision that would not only define who she was but test her very essence. What tactics would she employ to command the respect she craved? The pivotal moment of her journey was approaching, and with it, a realization that could shatter the facade she fearfully built around herself. The atmosphere transformed from overwhelming to galvanizing as Sarah merged back into the crowd, her heart beating with a newfound resolve. An inner dialogue surged, a blend of nerves and excitement, pushing her toward action. This would be at the moment she would take her first step into a world filled with both opportunity and opposition. David's voice floated toward her again, cutting through the noise. "Sarah, come join us for a moment," he urged, motioning her closer. The group diminished into a semicircle, their expressions attentive and expectant, charged with possibilities and shared aspirations. She could feel their energy fueling her, igniting the embers of her ambition. As the conversations unfolded, Sarah tuned in more to her inner voice. Her mind raced with strategies. She had to present her ideas in a way that couldn't be dismissed. Clarity began to crystallize in her thoughts. A tangible vision formed of how her nonprofit could embody values of support, education, and empowerment, not just for children like hers, but for anyone grappling with their circumstances. Sarah, one of David's colleagues, a woman named Riley, interjected, pulling her back into the present. "What are your thoughts on sustainable practices in community projects? You seem quite passionate about making a difference." Her pulse quickened at the open invitation. This was her chance. Yes. I envision a program that not only supports families but also teaches financial literacy. We could create workshops where people could learn budgeting skills, saving techniques, and maybe even entrepreneurship. The words tumbled from her lips, each one bearing the weight of her convictions. Riley nodded thoughtfully. That's powerful. Giving people the tools to change their situations is vital. But how will you fund this? It takes a lot to get something like that off the ground. The question struck like a shard of ice, harsh and abrupt. But where once her response would have splintered under the pressure of uncertainty, she grabbed hold of her courage instead. I know funding will be a challenge, she said, steadying her voice. But I believe that if we show people the potential of investing in their futures, they'll support us. I want to explore grant options and local partnerships. It's not just about financial help, it's about creating a community that believes in itself. A young man in the group, with arms crossed and a skeptical expression, leaned in. But what are you really bringing to the table, Sarah? A nice speech is one thing, but execution is another. What's your plan if it falters? She stopped, facing the challenge head-on. This was the confrontation she had anticipated. Her stomach twisted slightly but she held his gaze. What I'm bringing is passion, and a commitment to make this work. I've experienced the gaps in support myself, too many excuses, not enough action. When my children needed guidance, the resources were barren. How can we let that happen to so many others? The room lingered in silence, her raw honesty hanging in the air. It felt like a gamble, but somewhere inside, she felt a shift. This was the kind of vulnerability she could not only share but leverage. Every bit of her struggle could be harnessed as fuel for her mission. David stepped in, attempting to steer the conversation back to a more rounded discussion, but Sarah could feel the shift among her peers. The energy was palpable, something had changed in their perceptions. As the night unfolded, she sensed the lingering curiosity in her audience. Would they see her as a source of inspiration or a cautionary tale? Invigorated by the small victories, she found herself setting aside the haunting feelings of doubt. The early stirrings of respect may have sprouted, but she knew there was much work ahead. Returning to her thoughts, Sarah was aware that the most daunting tasks awaited her. To speak not only to the skeptics but also to thicken her resolve against the whispers of self-doubt that never ceased. Those voices could strengthen her intent or tear it apart. The power lay in her hands. Each connection made tonight could either bolster her ambition or become yet another hurdle. It was time to strategize, to develop actionable plans that would carry her vision beyond mere discussions. With an air of determination, she decided she would create a blueprint, complete goals, timelines, and potential pitfalls. The road ahead was rife with uncertainty, but perhaps that was where the greatest growth happened. This was her moment to thrive, but she would have to dive deep. As she collected her thoughts, the gnawing sensation returned, one of both excitement and trepidation. The threads of doubt still lingered like shadows, waiting to ensnare her resolve. Would she emerge successful or lost in the fray of her ambition? The night was unraveling, yet it marked the start of something monumental, a treatment for her fears, but also a confrontation with the larger constructs she had feared to dismantle. The ultimate question loomed: did she have what it would take to build a legacy they couldn't deny? Tomorrow would demand clarity. It was time to settle her doubts with action. The dawn broke with a tangible tension, one that pressed against Sarah's chest as she stirred from a restless slumber. Sunlight slanted through the window, casting a warm hue over her living room, yet the light couldn't penetrate the heaviness clouded in her mind. Today was no ordinary day, it was a definitive crossroads, and she felt its weight. With a quick motion, she pushed herself from the bed and made her way to the kitchen. The aroma of coffee soon filled the air. As she sipped, each gulp served as a reminder of what she was working toward. Each heartbeat pulsed with the promise of action and the impending reality of accountability. This was the day she planned to take that leap, to outline her vision and draft her blueprint. Her laptop lay open on the kitchen table, untouched since the previous night, bearing silent witness to her ambitions. She inhaled deeply, allowing the scent of fresh coffee to fuel her resolve. As she typed her ideas, words transformed into visions of workshops, inspiration, and community involvement. Each pressing key resonated with her purpose. But a creeping unease teased at the edges of her thoughts, questioning the solidity of her plan. What if they laugh? What if I fail? The thoughts loomed like dark clouds, casting shadows over her fledgling hope. Sarah paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Instead of succumbing, she chose to confront the nagging doubts. She couldn't let that internal critique silence her. Drawing upon her experience, she recalled the countless times she felt unworthy but pushed through anyway. Taking a leap of faith wasn't merely about the success of her nonprofit, it was about her evolution into the person she aspired to be, a leader who learned by doing. It was time to chart that course. With renewed determination, she began to write not just her plan but her narrative, the journey of her family, her struggles, and results that could extend beyond herself. Hours melted away as thoughts flowed into structured outlines. Her blueprint began to take shape, specific workshops neatly drafted, projected timelines outlined, and potential grant opportunities meticulously catalogued. What surprised her most was not merely the content forming on the page, but a newfound confidence surging from deep within. With every sentence, her passion ignited further, fueling her commitment. Seizing the momentum, she crafted a compelling introduction to echo her experiences, allowing her vulnerabilities to inform every decision and every goal she set forth. It was a stark revelation that her battles weren't only personal obstacles, they could also become her foremost strengths. They were the very foundation upon which she could build her vision. But as she paused to reflect upon her work, the familiar skepticism crept back in a pervasive whisper, echoing the doubts she had faced last night. She needed validation and encouragement as well. Perhaps it was time to gather feedback, identify mentors, and involve people who shared her vision. Yet, the thought of rejection, of hearing doubts articulated once again, hung like an albatross around her neck. A glance at her phone reminded her of the connections she had made recently. David had expressed interest in her ideas. Beyond that, Riley's encouraging words replayed in her mind. Why not seek their insights? She could present her thoughts, gain perspective, and harness their feedback to fine-tune her proposal. Suddenly, the walls of isolation began to crack. Anxiety shifted to a gentle buzz of excitement. Collaboration could not only enrich her project, but also serve as a shield against the lingering voices of her insecurity. A plan formed. The initial outreach needed to be swift, decisive, and enveloped in confidence. Typing a quick message to David, Sarah felt an exhilarating mix of apprehension and anticipation. Today marked more than the drafting of her nonprofit's framework, it was the moment of reaching out, of connecting in ways she had previously shied away from. Would this engagement liberate her vision from the shadows, or would it become another hurdle? As she pressed send, an unpredictable rush coursed through her veins. Was this the turning point? With every decision, uncertainty loomed, but so did the thrilling prospect of change. The clock ticked on, and Sarah steeled herself for what lay ahead. She understood that each step she took toward accountability could spur either encouragement or opposition. And with faces in her mind of those she'd soon approach, one undeniable truth settled within her: absence of risk was an absence of growth. Feeling the energy coalesce within her, Sarah realized she was no longer merely a bystander in her own life's narrative. She was forging her destiny, and the path would demand her unwavering resolve. The stakes were inescapably high, yet the question echoed in her mind: was she ready for the confrontation she sensed awaited her? A brief glance outside confirmed it was time to find answers beyond the confines of her home. With every intentional step toward social engagement, she could dismantle her fears. The sheer possibility of success beckoned, igniting a fierce determination that refused to wane. Would this day become the genesis of her legacy, or would it be buried beneath doubt and retreat? The future felt uncertain, yet within those possibilities lay the hope that tomorrow could bring a transformative breakthrough. Today, she would step into the unknown. The air outside was crisp, filling Sarah's lungs with a refreshing jolt as she stepped beyond the threshold of her home. There was a momentary hesitation, her roots holding her firmly planted in the familiar. But the vision of what lay ahead, connections, insights, perhaps even validation, propelled her into the bustling commotion outside. Each step away from her sanctuary felt like a forward lunge into an uncertain, yet enticing future. Her first destination was a small cafe, a familiar spot where creatives, freelancers, and dreamers congregated. It had been a backdrop for countless conversations in her past, now it transformed into the arena for her upcoming test. She found an empty corner table, summoned her courage, and laid out the sketchy proposals she had drafted. They were unbridled thoughts now ordered and polished. The clinking of cups and the murmur of chatter enveloped her. Each sound amplified her anticipation while simultaneously murmuring fears of inadequacy. What if David thought her ideas fickle? Would Riley dismiss her hopes as naive? The internal dialogue was relentless, threatening to drown out the excitement she harbored. As she awaited David's arrival, her fingers traced the edges of her printed outlines, each page a reminder of late nights and relentless determination. It was more than just a plan, it was the fruit of her vulnerability, a tangible manifestation of the dreams she'd long tucked away. Yet, the gnawing self-doubt wormed its way back in. How could she present herself as a leader when she still felt like the lesser player? David arrived quickly, his energy palpable. As they exchanged pleasantries, Sarah focused on grounding herself. She wanted to appear confident, to deliver her vision with all the poise she could muster. Though his friendly demeanor disarmed some of her nervousness, her heart raced as they settled into conversation. The moment of truth approached. "All right, let's see what you've been working on," he said, his enthusiasm unmistakably genuine, and she took a deep breath, opening her folder. As she began presenting her ideas, each word strung together with a mix of conviction and trepidation. She described her vision for workshops designed to uplift and engage, each session crafted from personal experience and extensive research. To her surprise, David responded with thoughtful questions rather than criticisms. He explored her concepts as though unveiling layers of a treasure trove rather than deconstructing a flawed framework. Encouraged by his engagement, she pushed through the initial fears. Parker's supportive nods prompted her to elaborate on the community aspect she envisioned. "It's not just about the workshops," she emphasized. "It's about creating a platform where real stories are exchanged, authentic narratives of struggle, growth, and triumph." With each segment she discussed, Sarah felt an inner shift, anticipation mingled with an unexpected exhilaration. But just as the conversation flowed toward heightened excitement, David's expression shifted slightly, a crease of contemplation darkening the enthusiastic line of his brow. "I can see the heart behind this, but what's the sustainability look like?" he pressed, his question hanging heavy between them. "How do you see it funded moving forward?" The question was sharp and stung just enough to tighten her throat. How had she entered this meeting without a detailed financial framework? She hadn't considered the reality of funding. Panic flickered through her. Fear threatened to engulf the moment. But instead of retreating, she inhaled the turbulence and faced it. "I hadn't fully fleshed that out yet, but," she began, words spilling forth, "I know there are grants available focused on community engagement. I could explore potential partnerships with local businesses that may benefit from the exposure." As she brainstormed possible solutions aloud, she felt a warmth blossom in her chest. No longer was she merely defending her project, she was actively cultivating it, nurtured by the reciprocity of their dialogue. By the meetings. And, Sarah had not only solidified her ideas but also unearthed a deeper personal resilience. The encounter challenged her assumptions about support and expertise. David's inquiries were not criticisms but essential catalysts guiding her toward growth. Driving home, Sarah replayed each interaction, each moment dissecting uncertainty and illuminating paths of possibility. The adrenaline surged within her. She felt the tangible progression toward turning her dreams into reality, a vital evolution in leadership she never believed she could achieve. Arriving home, she was not the same person from earlier that day. Pulsating with inspiration, she knew the next step required more than just ideas, she needed to expand her vision. As she considered new strategies, another thought surged. Riley had connections in the industry. Could her endorsement open doors she hadn't even imagined? Despite the weight of the unknown, the prospect electrified Sarah. A daring whisper nudged her, reach out again. Share your development. Would she risk another round of evaluation or let the thrill of possibility take charge? A fresh hook of determination gripped her, each connection could further her mission. As she turned her gaze to the computer screen, excitement mingled with hesitation again, pushing her toward the next leap. Was she ready to fortify her web of support and face the questions still lying ahead? As Sarah sat before her glowing screen, the weight of her aspirations pressed against her chest, urging her to act. She could almost feel the electric energy of potential coursing through her veins, a fire igniting her desire to connect, to share, and to grow. Yet, lingering doubt still hovered at the edges of her consciousness, whispering that perhaps she was grasping at straws. She began to draft a message to Riley. The cursor blinked, taunting her hesitation. What if Riley dismissed her progress as trivial? What if her enthusiasm wasn't enough to stir the same passion in someone so well established? Battling against the currents of fear, she recalled the powerful exchange with David. She had confronted uncertainty, transformed critique into creative fuel. Now, she needed to summon that spirit once more. Hey Riley, I hope you're doing well, she typed, her fingers dancing over the keys. As she continued, her initial self-consciousness gave way to excitement. I wanted to share some updates on my workshops. David had some constructive feedback that really helped clarify my vision, especially around sustainable funding, she wrote, her heart racing with each word. Pausing, she reread the lines. I think there is something here that could resonate widely, and your insights have always left an impression on me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The simplicity of her invitation felt risky yet empowering. She took a deep breath, hovering over the send button. What she was feeling was universal yearning for approval, seeking mentorship. Maybe this was a pivotal moment of growth, a decision that could change everything. Finally, she pressed send, allowing the message to sail into the unknown. Once the message left her inbox, she felt a rush of relief mingled with adrenaline. Each action taken further solidified her commitment to stride confidently into the unknown, to greet challenges not with fear but with curiosity. Yet, she knew well that nerves had a way of creeping back in. Would Riley respond? And if so, how would she react? Turning away from her screen, Sarah decided to revisit her ideas. The proposals needed more refinement, especially bolstered by David's feedback. She mulled over potential partnerships she could explore, recalling the list of local businesses and other creatives who might not just benefit her workshops but also collaborate effectively. Over the next few days, she threw herself into research, reaching out to businesses she hadn't previously considered. Each phone call served as a link in the chain of her ambition, an opportunity to build bridges and share her vision. As the days unfolded, moments of doubt sprouted, but she snuffed them out by revisiting the plan she had fleshed out with David, reminding herself of the steps taken toward her goals. Then, one Friday morning, excitement vibrated through her as her phone chimed with Riley's response. She opened it, her heart racing like a drumbeat. Hey! I loved hearing about your initiatives. Let's meet up, would love to dive deeper into this, the message read. Elated, Sarah felt like she was on the brink of something significant. A face-to-face meeting could lead to invaluable mentorship. It was a chance to showcase her commitment and refine her approach under Riley's experienced eye. Yet beneath her excitement lay a knot of apprehension. How would she articulate the substance of her plans in a way that conveyed her vision clearly? With determination rising within her, Sarah resolved to use this opportunity not just to share ideas but to solicit feedback, to seek Riley's critical eye on her evolving proposal. This encounter could be transformational, an immeasurable chance to discover ways to open doors that had previously seemed bolted shut. As the meeting day approached, she meticulously prepared, crafting a compelling narrative around her workshops, anticipated outcomes, and how her model could adapt to uncertainty. She practiced her delivery, articulating her thoughts until they felt fluid and natural. That night, restless anticipation kept her awake. The time had come to face her doubts head-on. She stood on the edge of a revelation. Would Riley recognize the fire burning within her? The energy in her body instinctively suggested yes. But what if the critique was more than she had prepared for? With those divergent thoughts swirling, Sarah fell into an uneasy sleep, her dreams punctuated with visions of potential and apprehension. Tomorrow would reveal whether those dreams could shift into reality. As dawn broke, she awoke with an overpowering sense of urgency. The vital momentum she craved was within reach. Would she walk into Riley's office ready to embrace this chance of elevation, or pull back beneath grappling uncertainty? The moment of truth loomed just on the horizon, promising metamorphosis or a poignant reminder of her fears. The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder than usual as Sarah walked through the glass doors of the sleek office building, her heart pounding in sync with her hurried steps. Each footfall echoed her internal struggle. The sleek environment contrasted sharply with the turmoil within her, an elegant space occupied by polished professionals who would easily dismiss her if she faltered. Taking a deep breath, she approached the reception desk. The receptionist flashed a polite smile, oblivious to the storm raging inside Sarah. As she waited for Riley's assistant to escort her to the meeting room, nerves tingled in her fingertips. This was her moment, yet all she could think of were the countless what-ifs spiraling in her mind. What if Riley questioned her ideas? What if he couldn't see the potential she did? The assistant led her down a long corridor adorned with contemporary artwork and motivational quotes, but all Sarah could focus on was the nearing confrontation with the authority she respected immensely. When they arrived at the meeting room, she paused at the threshold. She could hear voices. It was time to step into the arena. Riley stood as she entered, his demeanor warm yet commanding. "Sarah. It's great to see you," he said, gesturing toward a chair. Her heart did a flip. His welcoming tone temporarily calmed her racing thoughts. "Thanks for meeting with me," she replied, settling herself at the conference table, her notes meticulously organized in front of her. Their conversation began with small talk, but as Riley inquired about her journey, she could feel the stakes rising. "Tell me about these workshops," he urged, leaning forward. As she presented, her voice became steadier with each word. The logical structure of her narrative intertwined with her passion. She explained her vision and detailed how the workshops could serve as a catalyst for change, particularly in the areas of sustainability. Yet, as she spoke, she sensed Riley's analysis, his eyes critical yet engaged, dissecting her every phrase. When she finished, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. "Interesting," he finally said, but she noted the caveat in his tone. "I think we should talk about the target audience and your funding model. It's ambitious, but realism is important." A shiver of anxiety darted through her. The critique felt like a gut punch, rising doubts screaming louder than her confidence. Instead of folding under pressure, she took a moment to absorb his feedback. "Absolutely, I anticipated potential challenges in audience engagement, especially concerning sustainable funding," she responded, channeling a newfound grit. Riley's eyebrows raised, slightly impressed. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "What if you approached it from a more collaborative angle, partnering with organizations that already have established networks?" Encouraged by his constructive input, Sarah launched into a back-and-forth dialogue, discussing potential partnerships and strategies. She could feel a shift happening not just in Riley's perception, but in her confidence as well. With each nod from Riley, she realized she was no longer seeking validation, she was holding her ground in a professional discussion. As their meeting progressed, the atmosphere transformed. Riley began sharing his experiences, illuminating the challenges he faced when launching his own initiatives. His authenticity resonated with her. It was one thing to admire Riley from afar, but witnessing his vulnerability sparked a new determination within her. "Use your background to your advantage," he suggested, looking at her with earnestness. "Your unique experiences provide a well of insights that people will want to connect with." In that moment, Sarah understood her growing edge, the importance of channeling her story as a source of empowerment. It would not merely be about workshops, it would also center around her journey. As the meeting concluded, Riley's final words lingered in the air. "I believe in your vision, Sarah. Keep refining it, and let us brainstorm ways to make those partnerships tangible." Leaving his office, Sarah felt lighter than when she entered. She had faced her fears, engaged in meaningful discourse, and emerged with a sense of purpose. Yet in the back of her mind, shadows of apprehension danced. The path forward was still rife with uncertainty. Stepping back out into the bustling city, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She had survived the moment, but there was still a turning point ahead. The real test would come when she gathered enough momentum from this meeting to push through her next obstacles. As she looked to the horizon, Sarah contemplated her next steps, feeling the weight of her ambition pressing against her chest once more. How would she take this critical feedback and turn it into a project that would resonate with others? What if the next steps revealed greater challenges than she anticipated? As Sarah emerged from the sleek office building, the vibrancy of the city buzzed around her, each sound pulling her from her reflective state. The adrenaline still throbbed in her veins, propelling her forward. She had exchanged ideas with Riley, and for the first time, she had felt the stark difference between vulnerability and fear. It was a delicate line, and today she had walked it with newfound confidence. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Riley. His message was succinct yet motivating. "Let us meet next week to discuss potential partners." Heart racing, she realized this was more than just a follow-up. It was an opportunity to solidify everything she discussed. The prospect thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. Determined not to let her nerves overwhelm her again, Sarah decided to take deliberate steps toward crafting her project. She returned home, setting the living room table with a clutter of sticky notes, colorful pens, and an oversized notebook. With her child's finger paintings dangling on the walls as her backdrop, she immersed herself in brainstorming. Each idea flew onto the table, sparking another. Creativity often felt like an untamed force, but today, she learned how to wield it as a tool. Hours passed swiftly in a flurry of innovative concepts and strategies. By nightfall, she had outlined a potential workshop curriculum that emphasized collaboration and the importance of community, vital aspects Riley had alluded to. Ideas jotted down haphazardly began to connect. The emotional core of her story became the guiding light of her vision. But with excitement came doubts. The weight of her ambitions morphed into a pressing anxiety. Would her narrative resonate with others? Would her background, painted with strokes of struggle and resilience, be enough to build lasting partnerships? The lingering questions turned her resolve a shade darker, rousing her insecurities once more. Taking a deep breath, Sarah picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts, pausing over the name of an old acquaintance, Lila, who had carved her own niche in environmental advocacy. They hadn't spoken in years, but the idea of re-establishing that connection sparked a flicker of hope. Lila represented a potential ally, someone who could help elevate her workshops and bring credibility to her vision. With trembling fingers, Sarah typed a message, her heart racing as she hit send. The notion of reaching out felt like a plunge into the deep end. What if Lila dismissed her? But what if the opposite happened? The thrill of possibility outweighed the fear of rejection. As she reflected on her day's work, a realization emerged. Her journey was not just about sustainability workshops. It was about anchoring her experiences in authenticity, removing the veil of fear that threatened to shroud her potential. Transforming her story into something actionable required bravery, the bravery she had shown today during her meeting. Despite her emerging confidence, Sarah knew that vulnerability was a double-edged sword. Shared stories could foster connection but could also heighten the fear of disappointment. Yet there was a growing sense of urgency to drive her mission forward. The next day brought a response from Lila, an enthusiastic invitation to meet for coffee. Sarah's heart leaped. This time, she would walk into the cafe armed not only with ideas, but the determination to confront her fears. As she prepared for their meeting, the pressure of the unknown loomed closer. What obstacles awaited her? Would her vision withstand the scrutiny of a critical eye? As Sarah gathered her thoughts, she felt the inexorable pull of destiny. The time had come to face her insecurities head-on, but would she emerge stronger, or would past traumas resurface, clouding her ambition? Today was just the beginning, the journey had only just begun, and her next step was pivotal. Would she seize this chance or let it slip away? Walking into the bustling cafe, Sarah felt the familiar flutter of anxiety take hold. The inviting aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries mingled with her rise-and-fall heartbeat. She spotted Lila through the crowd, her figure animated with the same passion that had once drawn Sarah to her. But today, that magnetic pull felt more like the weight of her own expectations bearing down on her. As she approached, Sarah prepared to mask her jittery nerves. Lila stood up, her smile lighting up the space, and Sarah felt a jolt of relief mixed with apprehension. The small talk flowed easily, they exchanged greetings and caught up on years of disparate lives. But beneath the surface pleasantries, Sarah sensed a pressure building, an urgency to steer the conversation toward her project. "I've been working on something," she began, her voice wavering slightly. "A series of workshops focused on sustainability and community engagement. It's about creating connections and sharing our narratives. I thought of you because the weight of sharing her vision hung heavy in the air. Would Lila see her as someone to support or merely a distant acquaintance?" Lila leaned in, her interest piqued. "I love the idea. Sustainability is crucial, and community narratives can really transform lives." Her enthusiasm was contagious, pushing Sarah to reveal more, to dig deeper into her aspirations. As they delved into the specifics, Sarah felt a swell of empowerment. Ideas poured out of her, unfiltered and raw. Each concept was illuminated by the sincerity of Lila's responses, and for the first time, doubt began to wane. Yet, lurking in the shadows was a nagging thought: what if her visions were naive? What if they fell flat amidst the complexities of implementation? Just as Sarah contemplated the hurdles ahead, Lila posed a question that jolted Sarah from her revelry. "What are the biggest challenges you foresee?" The words hung in the air, charged. Sarah hesitated, the truth hovering on the brink of disclosure. She could recite a list of obstacles: funding, outreach, and the inevitable skepticism of stakeholders. But instead, her thoughts raced to the deeper fear lurking just below the surface. "Honestly, it's the fear of failure," she admitted, the vulnerability exposed for all to see. "What if nobody connects with my story? What if it's not enough?" For a moment, an uncomfortable silence enveloped them. Lila's eyes softened, a knowing glance exchanged that spoke volumes. "Fear can be paralyzing, but it can also be a catalyst for change," she said, her conviction palpable. "You have to embrace it, let it fuel your determination rather than stifle it." Sarah's heart beat louder in her chest. Lila's words echoed in her mind, but as they started to resonate, she also recognized her own hesitance to fully embrace her narrative. Could she really allow her past struggles to empower her, or would they strain her ambitions? The remainder of the meeting spun with brainstorming strategies to attract potential partners, innovative curriculum ideas, even potential venues. Each moment together strengthened Sarah's resolve and unveiled possibilities she hadn't considered. With Lila's encouragement, she began to visualize her ambition as a tangible pathway rather than a distant silhouette. As they wrapped up, Lila slid a napkin across the table littered with sketches and notes. "Let us collaborate. I can introduce you to some contacts who could help elevate your project." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was the opportunity she had yearned for, yet deep down her insecurities flared up like alarms. Was she ready to accept help? Did she truly have the fortitude to lead this project? With tentative hope battling her skepticism, she nodded slowly. That sounds incredible. Thank you, Lila. But as she left the cafe, a creeping uncertainty shadowed her elation. What would it really take to transform her vision into reality? The next steps were crucial, and Sarah couldn't ignore the weight of those unanswered questions. How far could she go if she continued to confront her fears? The future loomed promising, yet Sarah felt she stood at a precipice, peering into the void of her next challenge. Would she leap or falter, as she had in the past? The stakes were high, and now she had to navigate not just her ambitions, but her very identity, a balance between reflecting her past and creating her future. Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. What awaited her as she prepared to bridge the gap between dream and action? The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of development and transformation. Sarah was no longer just a mother trying to survive, she was evolving into a leader, stepping into her narrative with a newfound confidence that felt more concrete with each passing interaction. Over coffee dates, brainstorming sessions, and endless revisions, her collaboration with Lila blossomed. Together, they reached out to potential partners and secured preliminary commitments that lent credibility to Sarah's vision. It was exhilarating to witness her ideas gaining traction. What had started as a mere spark in her heart was now igniting into a community-driven initiative. The shift within her was unmistakable. The self-doubt that had once threatened to consume her during those initial moments at the gala now served as a reminder of her journey and her resilience. Sarah recognized that fear, which had once been paralyzing, became her motivation to confront challenges head-on. By harnessing her narrative, she dismantled the barriers erected by both her past and her insecurities. One crisp morning, as Sarah prepared for the first official workshop, she took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. The room, filled with eager faces ready to learn, buzzed with the energy of collective aspirations. She felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but it was a weight she embraced. It signified the impact she was beginning to have. As she stood in front of the group, a mixture of mothers, fathers, and even some young adults seeking their path, a surge of clarity washed over her. They were here, not to listen to her past struggles alone, but to join her in the journey toward empowerment and change. She shared her vision passionately, weaving her story into their narratives. Each word she spoke echoed with conviction, reflecting the authentic leader she had evolved into. The workshop unfolded beautifully, filled with interactive discussions about financial literacy and sustainability practices. Sarah noticed her participants leaning in, engaged and hungry for knowledge. For the first time, she felt as though she belonged. By the session's end, applause erupted, filling the room with a palpable sense of achievement. This was no longer just Sarah's dream, it was a collective triumph. Feedback poured in, affirming her efforts and the significance of her work. She had transformed her fears into fuel, and now she was witnessing the fruits of that labor. As she left the venue, her heart swelled with fulfillment. She had proven to herself that it was possible to rise above the circumstances that once felt suffocating. Her nonprofit initiative was taking flight, and she had built a community around the ideals she held dear. The recognition and validation were palpable not only from her peers but also from herself. Looking out at the city skyline, she gathered a deep breath, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment crystallize within her. Not only had she successfully launched her workshops, she had also transformed her narrative from one of struggle to one of inspiration. She had established herself as a competent force for good, a beacon of hope for others. The final puzzle piece fell into place when an invitation arrived in her inbox. Underneath the subject line "Recognition of Community Leaders," she found a heartfelt message from a local nonprofit organization acknowledging her work. They wanted to honor her in an upcoming event, showcasing her commitment to empowering families and transforming lives. This acknowledgement felt like the ultimate validation, the culmination of her journey distilled into recognition of her efforts and strength. Stepping into her now established identity, Sarah realized that she not only created a nonprofit but also redefined her path, a journey forged through adversity, converted into a mission to illuminate pathways for others. With a solid confidence and recognized competence, she had proven to herself that dreams ignited through hardship could bloom into legacy. This moment was a testament to her evolution, her courage to confront fears, and her ability to manifest tangible change. And so she stood, on the precipice of her next chapter, emboldened and resolute. The whispers of doubt grew fainter with every step forward. She was no longer just a struggling mother, she was a catalyst, an agent of transformation. Now, it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show support for heartfelt narratives that change lives. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible journey and where you hope to see her go next. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, a tale of perseverance that can awaken change in their lives. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.